So, welcome to the 11th episode of Heydorn and Watson, Douglas Social Credit. And today we will be talking about the implications of technology and technological advancement from a Douglas social credit perspective. As social creditors, we understand that technological advancement is important for the implementation of the Douglas social credit monetary and economic reforms insofar as that it can perform more and more of the work that humans have been doing, so thus it can provide human beings with more leisure time for themselves rather than work hours spent on providing all necessary goods and services, with the least amount of trouble to everyone, and thus to achieve this, they are to be provided a national dividend instead, to provide an income delinked from work that is a credit that is paid to every citizen for the work of these machines and this technology that we have. So, but we're also going to touch upon is that whilst technology is important, we understand, and the audience must understand, that there's also a question of how you implement and use technology. So the technology itself, of course, it's not good or evil in and of itself, but it can be used for good or useful or helpful purposes, or it can be used for bad or malicious purposes, or purposes that are just degrading or destructive or deteriorating. So we're going to talk about that a bit, and to just analyze what sorts of technologies we think are harmful, and what sort of technologies can be helpful and useful to mankind in order to achieve more greater leisure time and material and financial freedom.
Yes. So one of the things that you've rightly pointed out is that social credit, and I think this is quite clear if you look at Douglas's works, particularly his later works. Social credit is not pro-technology indiscriminately. Douglas talks about factory farming and strawberries that taste like blotted, I can't remember, blotted cotton, things like this. And so it's clear that technology is really only useful or a positive thing if it does what? If it enhances human well-being, right? So the basic social credit attitude towards technology is that technology is to be a servant to human beings and to human society, and if the technology in one way or another is undermining human well-being, then there's a problem, right? So we have to have the right order. We've got to have human beings and their welfare here and technology here, so that technology is subordinate to human objectives and human ends and human welfare. Not the other way around, where human beings become in one way or another slaves to technology, right? And I am going to take exception to one thing you said, which was that technology is not ever evil in itself. It's sort of the use that one makes of the technology that determines whether the technology is good or bad. Now, that's certainly true. in a sense that there are certain technologies which are more or less neutral, which could be used in a positive way or could be used in a negative way, depending on the purpose to which they're put. But I think I'm coming more and more myself around to the position that there are some technologies that may be, if you like, intrinsically inappropriate for human beings because
Sure.
we too have a design. We have a nature, and in order to flourish, there are laws that have to be respected. And it may be that certain forms of technology simply aren't compatible with our design, and that even just using them for any purpose is destructive of human happiness, welfare, objective well-being. And so one example of that, and this is something that is becoming more and more of an issue because they're starting to roll it out, is 5G technology in the information world. So, you've got, when it comes to wireless communications, you've got all the various developments, first generation, second generation, whether you're talking about cell phones or Wi-Fi or the Internet of Things, or whatever. And so the next generation that they will be rolling out is 5G, and that relies on millimeter waves and will require generators at every couple of meters, apparently, in all the areas where that's connected to this network in order for it to work. So we're all going to be marinated in this EMF radiation from these 5G generator stations. And there are a lot of people that will say, experts amongst them, of course, who will say that electromagnetic radiation is, depending on its intensity and which part of the spectrum it's from, it's very dangerous for biological well-being, very dangerous to health. And the 5G system is going to expose us even more. The intensity will be far greater than anything we have seen hitherto. And we already have people with the 4G or the 3G that are electrosensitive, who get headaches and brain fog and can't function properly because they're being exposed to all of these things.
Wow. So, gosh,
I don't know the full truth about this. I don't know. Maybe there is someone out there that does. But I just offer this sort of as an example of, here is a technology that I want to roll out, which may be in its very essence not compatible with human well-being. Right?
Well, yeah, especially if it's going to be causing health problems. It's going to be undermining people's health and mental, physical well-being. It's not serving a very good purpose.
Right.
Intrinsic purpose in that case.
Right. So, even in the case of 5G technology, even if you're using it to, let's say, create a network of self-driving cars, right? From a social credit point of view, we could say, well, if we had self-driving cars and it was safe, right? They weren't having accidents. They were safer, let's say, than people driving. If we could get it to that level of proficiency, then, yeah, from a social credit perspective, we could say, well, that's a good thing. That's a good use of technology because it's safer, so there'll be fewer accidents. And also, of course, you're having a machine do something to free up a human being so that he then is in a position to do something more meaningful with his time and energy.
Yes.
So it's increased leisure. However, at the same time, if we can only have that by exposing people to 5G EMF emissions, and it's going to be having a significant detrimental effect on their health, then even though we might be making a good use of the technology itself is problematic.
Yes, that's right. Well, I think it's really a case of a cost-benefit analysis there, as whichever benefits that we might receive from a technology like that, the negative side effects that it could have on one's health, one's physical and mental health, could potentially be could cancel out
Mm-hmm.
whatever benefits they receive, or even be worse, outweigh the benefits.
Yeah.
You might say, if you have a self-driving car that's directed by a wireless internet communication or connection, a 5G network, that's freeing you up from the stresses of driving, say, to and from work or your destination, wherever you're going. But then that 5G network is then causing you bodily irritations and health issues that could potentially have long-term damaging effects. That really, I don't think, is really, it's not worthwhile in the end if your own body is going to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
So with all these things, we have to be very careful about introducing them or using them. It's important that, if we're, self-driving cars would be a wonderful thing, but let's not introduce the system, the infrastructure necessary to make that a reality if we are not sure that the system is safe, right? It's important that if we do that, if we are to achieve that particular technological end, that we do ensure that the technology is completely safe. Right?
Yes.
And there might be different ways of handling that. Maybe there's something that they could build into the car to shield people, still use the 5G network, but maybe there's something that could build in the car to shield people, the passengers, from the effects of 5G. I mean, there might be ways of balancing these things out. I'm not an expert, but the point is, just because we can do something doesn't mean that we ought. And human happiness and well-being should be the priority.
Absolutely. Ultimately. It's got to be, the benefits have got to significantly outweigh the whatever negative effects there may be.
Right.
And
at
least significantly anyway.
Yes. I mean, the negative effects, you could argue that there are negative effects with everything. They would have to be minimal to make the benefit worth it. And this brings up another question which I think we need to address, and that is that, at least this is my take on social credit. There might be some social creditors out there that would disagree, but I would say that when it comes to these sorts of technological questions, should we have 5G or should we not have 5G? And I would say this is not a question for the individual to decide. It's not a question for a group of individuals to decide. We can't have a free-for-all or a laissez-faire sort of attitude towards it. Because it affects everybody, it's going to deal with the sort of the electronic infrastructure under which we all have to live and function. It is a decision that must be taken by the public authority. So it's up to the public authority, the legitimate public authority, to make a decision whether we're going to have 5G or not have 5G. And so it's not an individual decision, it's a social decision, right?
Yes.
And that means that social decision, it can either be in line with the canon, it can either be in accordance with the laws that objectively govern reality, and that we must obey if we want to achieve goodness, well-being, health, or it can be out of step with the canon, out of step with the laws that govern reality for the common good. And if the public authority makes a decision that violates the canon in that way, then we're all going to suffer the fallout.
That's right.
Right. So I don't think we can just say, well, let individuals decide whether we have it or not, because their decisions will have an impact on others, and there might be many people out there who are electrosensitive who don't want 5G, and they shouldn't be forced to be marinating in all this radiation simply because some people want to faster download service on their iPhones.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that as you say, if an individual starts using a particular form of technology or a service that's going to negatively affect other people in his community, then that requires a communal regulation. Requires regulation by the community to prevent certain things imposing on or affecting members of the community negatively.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this is again, sort of my own personal view. I'm not saying that all social creditors are of this mindset, but it seems to me, as we've sort of discussed in the past, that the way forward, especially as technology really advances and we start to be able to do some really amazing things, it seems to me that the correct way forward is going to be some form of what could be described as archaeofuturism.
Yes.
In other words, not all the technologies we develop are going to be compatible with human design or the nature of human beings. And in fact, in many cases, we may choose, and it might be the right thing to choose, to do certain things in a more primitive manner, quote unquote primitive,
Yes.
because we simply, at our particular stage of development in our nature as human beings, we simply are not compatible with some things maybe that computers can do, and it's not good for us, and it's not healthy, and it doesn't make for happy human beings. So we may reach the stage where, as a collective, we decide, okay, this sort of technology and this use of it is good, we can keep that, and this sort of technology is not compatible with human design, and we have to forego it.
Yeah, that's right. An example of that I read today in an article which deals with technology in agriculture, so farming and growing of food and products and so forth. And it criticized the gigantism in modern agriculture, where we have this mass production of food, whether it's broccoli or carrots or apples or any kind of vegetable or whichever, fruit or wheat or you name it. What's happened? One negative aspect has manifested with modern agriculture is that there's been an enormous loss of variety in products produced now because of the mass agricultural production. Is just producing all these bland, one size fits all products that have no real variety or uniqueness to them. Otherwise, with the more primitive, say, subsistence farming or sort of locally hand-grown food and agriculture, there's a greater sense of care and particularity and individuality when it comes to growing different types of food and vegetables.
Yes, and one of the problems too with sort of large-scale mechanized agriculture is that, and they've done studies to show this, that a lot of the food that we produce now doesn't, because the soils haven't been properly cared for, they don't have the same levels of vitamins and minerals that these foods had 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And so, we can produce a lot of food cheaply, but what's the quality of that food?
That's right.
And what's the impact then of low nutrient food on human health?
Yeah.
Right.
So quality has been sacrificed in the name of quality. Sorry, to turn that around. Quality has been sacrificed in the name of quantity.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Just because we can do things most efficiently by, in this case, by, large scale mechanized agriculture doesn't mean that we ought, because the end product, at least the way we're doing it, it doesn't serve human well-being. So it would, in that case, it actually would make more sense to have a more labor-intensive agriculture, if that's what's needed, to produce
Yes.
better quality food.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And then there's also the question of a lot of them chemicals and processing that goes into producing all this modern food, modern mass-produced agricultural products.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question of what kind of negative effects that's having on human health.
Yes, and that's a huge subject in itself. Whether you talk about pesticides of various kinds, herbicides, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and then of course when it comes to processing, you've got additives, flavorings, and colors, and all sorts of things. Which many of those things, they're carcinogenic, or they have other negative impacts on human health. And so, yes, maybe it makes sense, especially under the existing financial system. A lot of this stuff is rewarded by the existing financial system. Large quantity, low quality, half poisonous stuff. But I wouldn't want anyone who's come across Douglas social credit to automatically assume that we're always necessarily on the side of doing things with the least amount of human labor, no matter what it is. No, I mean the objective matters, right? And the objective has to serve the human being. And
That's
so,
right.
Just because we can produce large quantities of stuff with very few people working doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good objective.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
So we want efficiency. We want efficiency, but we want efficiency in service of an objective that is actually worthwhile.
Yes. That's right. Exactly. Very good. Well put, Oliver. It's also interesting to note that Clifford Hugh Douglas himself stated that he was against caged batteries for hens, or battery hens. So you have laying hens for producing eggs. They often today they'll store thousands of them in confined cages just for the purpose of popping out eggs all day. And he stated he was against that, not just for the sake of just out of a humanitarian concern for the chickens, but also for the quality as well, because research has proven that free range chickens that are allowed to roam freely in an enclosure produce better quality eggs.
That's right.
Yeah, they're far more healthier and produce far better nutrients and so forth.
No, that's right. And the quote, as I remember the quote, it ran something like, I don't care whatever their superficial taste might be, I have the conviction that they're not healthy eggs to eat. So healthy chickens produce healthy eggs, and healthy eggs produce healthy human beings.
That's it.
And how do you have healthy chickens? Well, to have healthy chickens, you have to let chickens do what chickens are made to do, and live a healthy, normal chicken life, and not be sequestered artificially with the lights on all the time, and with no room to eat natural foods in a mass production center.
Oh, no room to move even.
That's right.
Just confined in a box.
And one of the reasons actually that they have problems with raw eggs, E. coli, it's because these chickens that are in these caged longhouses, they're basically being marinated in their own filth, right? Their own
Yeah,
feces.
that's
So
right.
this creates an environment where bacteria can just run amok.
Yeah, that's right. So, what impact does that have on the quality and safety of the eggs produced?
Mm, mm, yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think that we could, this is an endless topic, and we could add
Oh, yeah.
many more examples. I don't know if you have any that come to mind, or because we've basically
Um,
covered the fundamental principles here.
Pretty much, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As you said, there's countless other areas where, there's pros and cons
Mm,
with
mm,
technology, and there's ways that
mm,
using it or implementing it in ways that could be helpful and healthy for human
mm.
beings, and other ways it's certainly not.
Yes. One thing that we perhaps should mention is, the zombie apocalypse that's being caused by all these people on their smartphones.
Yes,
Right? So
that's
you,
right.
you can see these videos on YouTube or elsewhere where you go into a public area. It could be shining, sun shining, lovely
Mm.
weather, and you have all these people that are maybe on their lunch break, or maybe they're having it's a Sunday and they're all gone to the park, and they're all on their
Mm.
phones,
Yeah, staring into their phones, clicking
staring.
and sliding and
Yeah,
so forth through, they're checking their social media or
yeah,
the internet, or in text message
right.
conversations or whichever. They just become addicted to the screens on their phones, to the point that they're not looking up and seeing how beautiful the sky is and how lovely the trees are and so
Yeah.
forth.
And not interacting
Yeah,
with other real human beings that are
that's
right
right.
next to them.
Exactly. Exactly. They've got human beings all around them, right next to them, on trains or buses or
Mm,
in public spaces,
mm,
and they're just not talking to each other. It's just
yeah,
often you'll see it's just dead quiet.
yeah. So
Everyone's in their own little world.
that's right. So I myself have serious questions about how the internet, as we now know it, how it's affecting the human mind, the human brain, the instant gratification of it, the variety
Mm.
of it. What's
Yeah.
it doing to people's attention spans? What's it doing to their IQs?
Yeah.
These are all very serious questions. And if we find out that the internet, as we have it, is not compatible with human design,
Mm.
you know, then
Yeah.
because some of these things too, I think we can't downplay the danger, because some of this technology, depending on its degree of incompatibility with human design, if it gets out of control, it could threaten the destruction of civilization. I mean, this is,
Could do.
you see that, for example, with nuclear weapons. Even we have the power to,
Yeah.
blow up the planet and end all life on Earth.
Yeah.
We have the
That's
capacity.
right.
Should such
Yeah.
technology even be allowed to exist?
Well,
That's.
exactly. That's right.
Mm,
That's right. That technology that can cause that scale of destruction,
mm,
is it really worth having,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
despite whatever purpose it may be kept for?
yeah,
It's you wonder what's the point of it? It's just going to destroy us all anyway.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
If you're
there,
talking about it being beneficial or helpful to
right,
mankind.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the fundamental point is that there is what Douglas referred to as a canon. That is to say, there is a natural law that governs reality, that governs human nature. And we can only be successful, we can only be happy, healthy, and wise if we identify that law and obey it. And that is
Yes,
true both for individuals, but it's also true for communities on the social level.
that's right.
Right? So both individuals and communities in their respective proper spheres have to discern what this law is correctly and have to obey it,
Yeah.
because the consequence of not discerning correctly, or the consequence of not obeying what one knows to be the correct law, is dysfunction, and there's no
Yeah.
escaping from that. It doesn't, you can't say, well, I don't want it to be that way. Reality is what reality is.
Mm-hmm.
And we're either
Right.
in alignment with it, or we are violating it. And if we're in alignment, we'll have good consequences. If we violate it, we have bad consequences. And that law is inexorable and cannot be avoided, cannot
Yep.
be suspended. So
That's right.
that's
Exactly.
the harsh reality of the situation. And because of that, we cannot say, as I read Douglas, as I understand Douglas, we cannot say that social credit is pro-technology to the point of giving it sort of like a carte blanche approval.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no. It's got to be. There's got to be limits and a sense of reasoning and objective analysis
Yeah.
when it comes to the use and implementation of technology for the sake of the common good and health of the maintenance of the health and well-being of humans.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have anything else to add, I think we might bring it to a close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I
And
think we
we
covered all the
will.
bases.
I think so. And viewers, please subscribe. If you have any comments, you can leave them in the box. And we will join you next week for another riveting episode of Heydorn and Watson.
Yes.
All right.
Right.
Take care, Michael.
Right. Thank you. Yes, you too, Oliver. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, bye-bye.